I'm an end user. I need to access my application, in this case, a web-based application that is a non-standards-based app, right? Does not understand SAML, does not understand OIDC. And I simply need to get that application, but I want to have a consistent user experience to be able to authenticate with HYPR to get to this application. Now, this is a good example where in this demo environment represents a reasonably accurate representation of what we see with a lot of our customers, where we also have Azure. So I have an Azure account. I also have an Okta account, right? So I might have accounts and access across multiple cloud providers and authentication services, but I shouldn't have to know or care.
Right. And Ryan, that's what you were saying, right? I mean, over the years, you get these, whether it's through M&A, different divisions, you name it, that just is a reality that we're facing.
Correct. And at the same time, like, I think, Steve, you put it best. You shouldn't care. You don't know. Like, as an end user, like, asking our end users to have to manage that thought pattern is just a terrible ask.
Yeah, I mean, I'm steeped in this every day. I don't want to have to know. I don't want to have to know. Right? So when I'm an end user and I click my link to get to this application, in this case, based on the particular pattern, this being a legacy application, that request actually hit the orchestrator first. Orchestrator has a really simple policy that says to get to this application, you need to authenticate with HYPR. Now, in this demo environment, I don't really have any way to establish user context. I'm not already authenticated with something else. So in this case, I'm going to put in a username into a form. This could, in reality, should be something more like a QR code or a passkey that I put in to establish that first interaction of, okay, I'm claiming to be who I say I am. But in this case, right, I hit submit as that end user. I immediately get a push on my device to authenticate with HYPR with biometric. I authenticate with my biometric on my phone, and then I'm in my application, and that's it, right? So it's really not a flashy demo, and that's intentional, because it shouldn't be flashy or complex for your end users. I click my link to get to an application. If I'm not authenticated or based on the rules that need to enforce authentication, I authenticate with HYPR and I'm in my application. What I don't have to know or I don't have to care about is the fact that in this case, what the orchestrator did post-authentication, right, is that this application in this case needs information about me, Sam, from Azure, also from Okta, but we're using HYPR to authenticate. So in this case, the orchestrator handles getting that relevant information about Sam from Azure, from Okta, and presenting it to the application in the way that that app expects, in this case, a legacy application pattern. And in this case, that application, right, is not at all directly integrated with HYPR or with Azure or with Okta. So I'll pause there.
You know, I feel like I did a lot of lead up to this being an exciting demo, and it's kind of like, it's a little anticlimactic, right? But in the same token, it wasn't supposed to be like this big fractured experience and lights and flashing and all this. It was supposed to be dead simple, a seamless user experience, and that's what you just did. Is there a way that we can see a little bit more just about what happened behind the scenes, since that was so seamless?
Yeah, for sure. I'll make this pretty brief. So when we talk about non-standard or legacy applications, oftentimes what the orchestrator is doing is effectively proxying traffic to those apps. So I'll be really brief here, right? But effectively what happened is when I, as the end user on my browser, hit my link to get to that application, that was a request to the orchestrator. Orchestrator is a policy enforcer. So it has policy either written in the orchestrator or policy written somewhere else that the orchestrator goes and retrieves and says, what does this user need to do to take this action? In this case, simply get to the front door of the application. Well, the orchestrator redirected the user, right, to authenticate to HYPR for passwordless. Upon successful authentication to HYPR, we consumed that token that we got back from HYPR, and then we went and retrieved additional stuff about that user. Right? In this case, some attributes, some entitlements from a couple different cloud services, pulled that back into the orchestrator, and then passed that to the application, in this case, a non-standard app, in the way that this application expected, right? So that this app did not have to be integrated with any of these services to do that. The orchestrator handled that upfront authentication, handled the upfront policy enforcement of what else does that user need to do, or what other context does the orchestrator need to go get and from where, did its thing, passed that context to the application. And so that's a lot of words, but you saw in that demo how quick all of that actually is in reality, right? And that's what orchestration is meant to do. That is, again, be able to completely decouple these services from the application itself. And I, as a CIO, as a CISO, and as well, importantly too, as an application owner, I don't have to deal